Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Christy LaMagna. Welcome to Menu Mastery. What we're going to talk about for the next 45 minutes to an hour is how to master the myriad of food allergies and sensitivities that our guests are coming to us with, that we're being asked to cater to, how we do that so that the food is still interesting, delicious, on budget, and meets all of the dietary requirements that seem to be popping up. So I'm looking forward to spending the next 45 minutes with you, and here we go. One of the things that I have found is that when I was growing up, you ate whatever your mother gave you. There were no peanut allergies. There were no sensitivities to things. The older I get, the more that I'm finding that people are allergic to foods that otherwise, when I was growing up, weren't an issue. So if you look at the first slide, people can be lactose intolerant, allergic to peanuts, can't eat shellfish, won't or can't eat pork, can't or don't eat beef. It used to be vegetarians, now you have vegans. There's so much that we need to be mindful of. It seems as if almost any food group has someone or a fraction of people who can't or won't eat it. But as planners, it's our job to figure it out. So take a minute to look at this little cartoon, and what it does is it just speaks to, who can't drink milk. It pokes fun at people's dietary restrictions, and the reason that I put that in is it's a very, very serious subject, but we as planners need to be mindful of it is our job to take care of this. It is our honor to make sure that our attendees are happy and well fed at our events, and to just keep our sense of humor about us as we're doing this, because truly it can get frustrating. To that end is the next slide, and you've got folks walking in, and each one has a particular thing that they either can or cannot eat. And the other thing that I really like about this slide that I want you to pay attention to is you've got a wide range of ages in here. And the way Generation X people eat is different than millennials, which is different than baby boomers. So it's not just what the food allergies are, it's also the demographic based on male and female, as well as their age. So each person has their own preferences on top of their particular generation style and their dietary needs. So there's a lot going on that we need to be paying attention to. So let's dive in. Gluten, big buzzword these days. Who can't eat gluten? Who's allergic to gluten? Most people at this point are only vaguely familiar with what gluten is, and many of us don't truly know all the places that gluten hides. So gluten is just the name of a protein that's found in wheat. If you are truly allergic or have a reaction to gluten, you have what's called celiac disease. Many people now believe that eating gluten-free is a way to lose weight. It's going to make them more healthy. People with celiac truly cannot have gluten. For the rest of the world, you can avoid it, but it is not going to cause you to gain weight. It is not going to cause adverse reactions in you the way it does for someone with celiac. If you choose to avoid it, or as we as planners need to make sure that someone who is gluten-free gets gluten-free meals, we need to know where gluten is. And it's not as easy as you might think. So if you look at this slide, it seems very simple. You've got grains, and it says the grains that you want to avoid are anything with wheat or rye. So rice is fine, quinoa is fine, corn is fine, vegetables, fruits, meats. It looks pretty simple. Well, the truth is that not all meat is gluten-free. If you get processed meats, if you get sausage, it may have fillers in it that include flour. If you buy turkey, and it doesn't say that it's 100% organic or it's 100% turkey, that turkey probably has fillers in it, and those fillers often have flour in them. So your turkey can have gluten in it. So let's imagine then we're serving tuna, and there's no gluten in that. And of course, you're not going to give your gluten-free guests bread. So you give them a tuna salad with pickles. Do you know that gluten-free people can't eat pickles? Because pickles are brewed in malt, and malt is made from barley. So if you're gluten-free, a lot of times you can't have certain sauces because they're blended with flour. Chocolate has flour and fillers in it. So if you've got folks who are highly gluten sensitive, one of the things you can do, because you can't possibly learn all this, is ask them what they can and cannot eat. So what happens is when you do your best and people walk away saying, oh, we didn't like the food or that wasn't great, it could be because you've made mistakes that you didn't even know you were making. If I'm gluten sensitive and have celiac disease and I put on my registration card that I have celiac disease, if you say to me, Christy, we want to make sure we accommodate you, and you ask me, then I would love to tell you, because I want to be able to eat well and not be sick. So if, for instance, you decide, okay, gluten-free, so you're going to do a stir fry because you can control the fact that the chicken is gluten-free and you've got vegetables, did you know that soy sauce has flour in it? So it seems like such an easy thing. Gluten hides everywhere. Again, people who are avoiding it or who have celiacs can tell you very quickly where gluten is hiding. But you do just want to make sure that you are paying attention to that, because gluten hides in places you would never imagine. So the other thing too is people who try and eat gluten-free still do want sweets, and they want to be able to have desserts. So you can do sorbets, you can do other things, but you just have to be sure that you could do, for instance, a flourless cake. Chocolate, if you can do it that it's pure chocolate and it doesn't have any fillers blended in. So work with chef and talk to him about, I've got a gluten-free group, and what can we do? What can we bake them? And you can come up with some really creative, healthy options that other people will like as well. Just a really quick thing that you might not know, to give you an example of how much gluten hides in things. Red licorice has wheat flour in it. And as far as I knew, red licorice was nothing but chemicals. Red licorice has gluten in it, so you do want to be aware of that. Okay. The next thing that people talk about, and it's very common these days, is who has nut allergies. And it's easy to see peanuts, you know, when they're out on a table, or they're, you know, encrusted in chocolate and they're M&Ms. But peanuts actually hide in many, many different places that we may not be aware of. Unlike gluten, if you have a nut allergy and you inadvertently ingest nuts, you can die. So we need to be particularly careful about nut allergies. So in this picture, what of these things has nuts and what doesn't? So it's chicken satay, it's a veggie burger, and it's potato chips. At a first blush, you would think none of them have nuts in them. All three do. So veggie burgers often have nuts in them as a filler, or as a to make it more substantive and to give it more bulk. Oftentimes, if you're not careful, kettle cooked chips can be cooked in peanut oil. Chicken satay, famous for having peanuts in it. And when you say to the chef, you know, no peanut allergies, oftentimes if they're ordering something from outside, you know, if it says chicken satay, they may not be thinking peanuts. I actually, if we're going to do some kind of satays, I will look at the ingredients before I let the chef order them and say, this is what we want to do. Do you have them in the kitchen? Look at the ingredients and make sure that that's what they're ordering. Because, again, one mistake with peanuts and you can kill someone. So, whereas peanut oil isn't as common as it used to be, you want to be incredibly careful about nut allergies. The other thing is, when we do assortments of cookies, and you say, okay, I'm going to do peanut butter cookies, I'm going to do chocolate chip cookies, so we're going to label them so people know where the peanut butter cookies are. The challenge is, and I've had hotels do this to me, they put everything on the same plate. Or when they go to do the refresh, you know, you had nothing but a plate of chocolate chip cookies here and a plate of peanut butter cookies here, and when they do the refresh, they're condensing everything, so they get rid of one plate and they put everything together on the one plate as things are being minimized down. So now your plates that were pristine now have peanut butter, you know, the peanut butter plate now, the peanut butter cookies are now on the chocolate chip cookie plate, or vice versa, and now someone who's highly allergic is going to have a problem. So you have to be hyper sensitive. Sometimes because it's going to make someone sick, sometimes because it could kill someone. And, you know, if I'm the one who's going to die from it, I'd appreciate it if you were particularly careful. So, vegetarian and vegan. These are easy, right? If you look at these foods, it's vegan, you know, okay, if you can't do dairy, you're not going to have yogurt or cheese, but there's pesto, there's mushrooms, beans are fabulous for vegetarians and vegans, right? Great for protein. You're safe here. The truth is, you're actually not safe here. What you need to know is that just like foods that are gluten-free or that aren't gluten-free, foods for vegans and vegetarians that you would never suspect they can't eat, they can't eat. So s'mores, what could be more unthreatening than a s'more, right? Who doesn't love a s'more? S'mores have marshmallows. Marshmallows contain animal marrow. The gelatin that holds a marshmallow together is made from animal marrow. So a true vegetarian will not eat anything with gelatin in it. Worcestershire sauce has anchovies in it. Who knew, right? Olive tapenade, seasoned with anchovies. Refried beans, depending on the label, you want to read the labels, are often cooked in animal lard. And that's why, for those of us who like refried beans, that's why they taste so good. Pesto is oftentimes thickened with, pesto can have cheese in it, which is a problem. Cheese itself, even if you're a vegetarian and not a vegan, but you are trying to avoid meat products, the problem with that is a lot of times the linings of animals' stomachs are used in cheese to help bind the cheese, which I'm very sad now that I know that, because I can never unlearn that, because I love cheese. So you say to yourself, well, I'm a vegetarian, of course I can eat cheese. They're actually now starting to label cheeses that say no animal products in it because of this intestines and the linings that they use in the cheese. So giving a vegetarian eggplant parmesan, not going to work depending on what kind of cheese is being used. So things hide everywhere, and one of the reasons I thought it was really important for us to do this conversation is because, again, if I'm a vegetarian, I know that I can't have certain types of cheese or that I can't have refried beans. You as the planner perhaps have done your best and you say, I'm going to do a Mexican themed meal. We're going to do fajitas, but we'll have tofu. They can use the peppers and the vegetables. Again, you do your best and you put cheese on it, bam. There's soy sauce on it, bam. I mean, I'm going to end up disappointed. You did your best, you didn't know. So my goal in doing this is to give you information that I, as a vegetarian or a vegan or someone with celiacs, may decide I'm not going to make a big deal out of it, but I'm still going to leave unhappy. Unhappy people tend to talk. So they'll say, yeah, I don't want to make a big deal out of it. They're still going to say something, after the meeting, oh, it was fine, but the food wasn't that good. So the more we know, the more we can avoid that. We're honored to have these people as our guests for a lunch, a day, 3 days, 5 days. It's up to us to make sure that we're taking care of them. People who are hungry are cranky, and cranky people are miserable to plan with. So we really do want to keep them fed and keep them happy. One of the things that we talk about for vegan, if I'm a vegan and I can't do dairy and I can't do meat, you may get frustrated and say, well, what can I feed these people? Especially when you think about breakfast. Breakfast is carbohydrates for many of us. It's a bagel, it's a muffin, it's cereal. So for those of us who are doing paleo and are avoiding carbs, what are we doing? Potentially bacon, sausage, we're doing meats, we're doing eggs. So and cheese on top of your eggs at times. So what am I going to feed a vegan? And the truth is, vegans, the simplicity of their food is beautiful. Vegans can eat many, many, many things, and you just have to be clever about it. So for a vegan, why don't you have a juice bar? And if you look at that beautiful picture of green juice, you can have someone doing an action station right there where they're going to pick their carrots, their wheatgrass, their broccoli, their whatever it is, and someone who's not a vegan can certainly enjoy that and put whatever they want in it. You can do you can juice, which is where you take all the fiber out of what you're drinking, or you can juice something. So if you're juicing it, or you can do smoothies. So if I choose to have, strawberries and yogurt, sorry guys, that's fine for me too. But instead of worrying about eggs and bacon and bagels, just do something simple. Fruit and vegetables can be a beautiful breakfast. You can do, I like to call it a non-egg omelet. And if you put out for breakfast, if you're going to do an action station with eggs, why not have one frying pan that is dedicated to your vegans and your vegetarians that is just sauteing vegetables? And you can have, for the vegetarians, like a Greek yogurt sauce that they put on top of it. It's beautiful, it's clean, it's healthy, everybody's happy, and I, as a carnivore may see that and say, I would love some sauteed broccoli for breakfast. I've never thought about that. So, and it's simple. We have to get past the fact that we think it's complicated. Vegans, it's a very simple type of food. You can season it with, think about lime and cilantro. Okay, you take lime and cilantro with a little bit of olive oil, drizzle that over anything, and it's going to be fantastic. So you can do things that are vegan friendly, that everyone can enjoy. And again, our goal is to keep this simple, cost effective, everyone happy. So if you can slip in some meals that are actually friendly to vegans that the rest of the attendees don't even realize, the salad dressing for this is vegan friendly. Nobody else has to know that except the vegans. So you can make everyone happy and actually improve the quality of the food in that you're pulling out anything that's processed and the gluten or the fats, and your attendees will be more awake, feel better, and once again, that makes for a better conference. So for vegans, again, grains, you can do so much with rice. You can toast it, you can put fruit in it. Ask a vegan, if you've got vegans coming to your event, how wonderful would it be if you as a vegan get an email from me as the planner that says, hey Caitlin, I know that you're coming to the upcoming PCMA show. I know you're a vegan. Do you have any favorite recipes you'd like to share with me? Tell me what you like to eat in the mornings because I want to make sure that you're taken care of. And you go to chef and say, okay, can you make this? Can we do quinoa oatmeal? Can we do whatever it is? People like to feel heard. They like to feel special. They want to feel important. And we want to please them. Chef wants to please them. We don't want to waste money or food. So ask. And yes, you may have 15 vegans. If you ask each of them and say, I'm asking all of our vegans to please give me, recipes that they like to eat, and we'll do our best to have chef make some of them. And then you can say, you know what, not everyone's going to get it this time. I've got your recipes for next time. It's kind of a fun way to do it, and it will keep people happy. So the other thing, as long as we're talking about breakfasts and foods, yogurt can oftentimes not be good for people with gluten allergies or vegetarian, because sometimes yogurt is not good for vegans. So you have to be really careful. Read the labels. Not everything is as it seems. I go back to the red licorice. Who could believe that red licorice would have gluten in it? Just because it looks safe or looks like there's nothing dangerous in it for some people, it doesn't mean there's not. So read your labels, read your labels, read your labels. Kosher. Okay, one of the things that is really, really incredibly important for us to be mindful of and to know in advance is how many kosher guests we have. So because most times you're not in a facility that has a kosher kitchen. So the lead time on kosher meals, really important that you have that. The cost of kosher meals, pretty high. So if you know that you had 5 kosher guests last year, make sure you remember to budget them into your numbers this year, because kosher food, you do have to make extra accommodations for it. One of the things that I like to do is for my kosher guests, I have someone who manages food and beverage. I introduce them to that person and say, this is Caitlin. She's going to be making sure you get your meals every day, and Caitlin will watch as they're filling in to the lunchroom or wherever the feed and seat is. And when that person sits down, she's mindful of where they're sitting, and then very discreetly brings them their food. It's important to do that. Don't make them wait. Don't make them get their food when everybody else is half done. Their food is cold. Folks who end up with kosher meals oftentimes are either forgotten or just not served in the same manner as everyone else's, because I've got 300 people eating lunch. I have one kosher person. My mind races to, I'm going to take care of the 299. That one person is hungry. So be mindful of kosher. It's not hard to do. Of everything that we've talked about, kosher is the easiest, because the hotel, you farm it out, the food comes in, the hotel, gives it to you sealed, wrapped, and all you have to do is deliver it. So again, don't assume that because it's something that's not normal, that it's difficult. If I had the entire room full of kosher people, I place the order and I serve the food. There's no cooking. Think about it. It's actually so much easier. So, that's kosher. If it's kosher, it's going to say certified kosher. Your hotel, if they say to you, we can cook a kosher meal, They can't. You want to make sure that anything you do is certified kosher, and when you serve it to the guest, it will be marked and it will say that. So you really do need to be careful about that. There is no fudging when it comes to kosher. Halal. I'm finding people, I don't know if you are, I'm finding people asking me if my menus are going to be halal friendly. And initially I was, sure, I'll make sure that they are, was what I said, because I had no idea. To me, halal is, when I'm in the city, I go to a street vendor and they sell halal food. But if you asked me what makes food halal or not, I couldn't tell you. So I looked it up. Halal is very, very, very similar to kosher. The only difference is that nothing with pork is allowed for halal. Absolutely nothing. So anything that was killed in a permissible form by Muslims is considered halal. So it's very, very, very similar to kosher. And if you want these slides after the event, I'm going to tell you how you can get them so that you've got these definitions and you can keep them as kind of a cheat sheet for after this, because again, it's a lot of information. I want you to retain it. I want you to remember it. Halal is, I think you're going to start to hear more people asking about halal friendly menus. Again, it's pretty easy. What makes it intimidating is when you don't know the answers. So the fact that you've joined in, first step, good for you. So again, meats, here's halal. So one of the things that we want to make sure of, again, just no pork, and you're good with halal. One of the other things that we want to talk about is seafood and shellfish. Some people are allergic to shellfish, which is called a crustacean allergy, because it's a crustacean. Other people are allergic to fish in general. One of the things that I have found, if you look at the pictures here, so obviously the first one, it's pretty obvious that those are, it looks like lobster claws, crabs. That's easy. Underneath it, well, that's a mushroom cap. And next to it is what looks like, egg rolls. And if I were to guess, I would say that that's sesame chicken. And here's the problem. If I guessed, I could be wrong. And again, shellfish is very similar to nut allergies. If you can't eat shellfish, there's no kind of allergic to shellfish for the most part. You're allergic to it or you're not. It's not always deadly or not, but if you bite into something that has shellfish in it and you're not supposed to eat it, a lot of times your mucous membranes are going to swell, and that kind of slows down breathing. And I, for one, enjoy breathing on a daily basis, so I prefer not to take that privilege away from my guests. So what happens is we talk about that food needs to be labeled because, again, the pesto may have cheese in it, so the pesto is not vegetarian friendly. What looks like a pretty innocent mushroom cap, again, people, when they don't have information, they make it up. So to me, those mushroom caps are stuffed with cheese and garlic and breadcrumbs because that's what I want them to be stuffed with. What do you think they're stuffed with? Some of you may be thinking, they're stuffed with crab meat. Other people of you, are thinking, well, they're stuffed with, mushrooms and cheese and garlic. We fill in the blanks when we don't have the information. So I'm going to look at that and take it because I think I can eat it. What happens is, if everything is labeled, that's fabulous if you're doing a buffet. When you've got servers who are passing food on trays, we often forget that because everything is labeled, anything that's passed isn't necessarily labeled. And if the server is told, these are stuffed mushrooms, okay, everybody's busy. So did chef have the opportunity to say to every single server who's doing passed foods, these are mushroom caps, here are the ingredients? Perhaps not, or perhaps I was supposed to be the one serving the mushrooms and something happened, so I give someone else my tray. I knew that they were stuffed with crab meat. You're now serving for me and you don't know. So you really want to make sure that you talk to your banquets manager and you talk to chef and make sure that past food is given the same amount of attention as food that's on a buffet, because again, I take a bite of something and it's got seafood, peanuts, whatever it is, it makes for potentially a very unhappy night for me. And your servers are going to get asked a lot of questions. So imagine, this poor server who is simply trying to feed me a stuffed mushroom. Does this have cheese in it? Does this have shellfish in it? Do you know if this has scallions? I'm allergic to scallions. They don't know. So what you can do is you can educate those folks. I'm a big fan of trust then verify. So you can, if you in advance get stickers so that you know that green is vegetarian, yellow is gluten-free, and you have cards that are placed on trays that say stuffed mushrooms and then the colors of the stickers, or just little notes that say gluten-free, vegetarian, G for gluten, V for vegetarian, VG for vegan. It will allow your servers to not have to memorize it, because the truth is you can't take ownership of what's going to come out of their mouth. So you want to pay a lot of attention to people who are passing food, how they're treating that, because again, one mistake can cause a real problem. The other thing that I thought was really interesting that I learned in doing research for this is when you think about doing a buffet, if I know I'm allergic to seafood, then I simply skip the seafood tray. So what I learned was that so you open up a chafing dish, and what happens? Steam comes up. Well, and this isn't the same with peanuts, because you don't cook peanuts the way you cook shellfish. When you lift that lid up, the steam from that, which now is in the air, when you lift it up, the condensation drips, that goes into whatever was next to it, which happens to be, in this example, rice. Or the steam from that can waft over your rice, and people with immense shellfish allergies can get sick from that, because the condensation had shellfish in it and the steam. I never would have thought about that. So to be safe, what I would say is, if you're going to do a buffet, all the seafood, all the shellfish are in one place. The rest of the seafood is in another place. But anything, if you were going to do something that's also got rice included in it, put everything that is not seafood related completely on a separate table. I would rather take 3 extra steps to get to the rice than be the person who takes a scoop of it only to find out that the condensation from the lobster tails that were right next to the rice have dripped into my rice, and now I'm going to get sick. So again, the reason that I'm glad that you showed up today is because it's stuff that you may not be thinking of. It's stuff that people may not be doing, and it only takes once to get someone sick to really, it's going to stick with you. It's not something you can undo once it's done. And I will tell you a very quick story. I was doing an event for neurosurgeons, and that's why this turned out to be an okay story. But we had served chicken satay. We worked with chef. We looked at the ingredients. Well, the supplier ran out of the chicken satay that we had ordered, substituted it. The chef never noticed. I didn't know that. So one of my doctors said, "Can I eat this?" I said, "Absolutely. I knew you had a peanut allergy." We checked the ingredients, and I'm busy saying to him, "Everything is fine. I personally took care of this." The guy takes a bite of it, and bam, he's on the floor. I was in a room full of surgeons. Someone had an EpiPen, hits him with it, and he was fine-ish. Okay, but so when this happened, I was like, well, how in the world? I personally took care of this. And then we come to find out the vendor changed boxes because they didn't have what we ordered. The chef wasn't there when it was checked in. And, on and on and on it goes. So sometimes you can be as careful as you want, and mistakes are going to still happen. So it's incumbent upon us to be as locked up and prepared 2 steps beyond what anyone would think, so that when something goes wrong, we have the bandwidth to take care of it and to manage it. The other thing is, when you think about seafood, sometimes we can't afford to feed our guests seafood. We certainly can't always afford to give our guests sushi. So one of the things that I've done in the past is I've done California rolls. And I would think that that's safe, that's fine for anyone who doesn't have an allergy to seafood. Well, imitation sushi has fillers. The fillers have flour. So, and people with gluten allergies can have rice. So you would think that sushi would be fabulous for people who have gluten allergies. If you're serving them California rolls and you can't do premium quality sushi, you have now thrown off your folks with gluten sensitivity, because imitation sushi has flour in it. So you're darned if you do, you're darned if you don't. So if you decide, you know what, shellfish is too risky, so I'm going to go with sushi, again, you should be fine. The rice is fine, everything, but blammo, you've got in the imitation sushi meat, you've got wheat. So you've got to be really, really, really careful. One of the things that I found in doing this, I'm just going to advance my slides, is people now have issues with cheese. They're lactose intolerant. So, and I never really thought about that. And again, cheese, milk, you don't realize how much you cook with it or how often it appears in menu items until you have to take it out. So, again, I chose to do this in a way that's a little bit amusing because we have to keep our senses of humor about this, because it could be just make you mad over, how much there is to keep track of. So people who are lactose intolerant, that doesn't mean they can't have milk. It means they have to have lactose-free milk. They have to have lactose-free cheese. There are alternatives. There are non-dairy ways to bake. There are non-dairy ways to have cheese. So when I say to you, I'm lactose intolerant, that doesn't mean take anything that has the word cheese or has a cheese in it off the menu. It's what do we substitute? How can I do this with? I can have a glass of milk if I'm lactose intolerant, if I'm drinking lactose-free milk. So if I want cereal in the morning, lactose-free milk is going to go a long way for me. If every morning I have Raisin Bran, just get the milk. So ask people what their food sensitivities are. How much is it going to cost you to get a half gallon of lactose-free milk for the 3 people who are lactose intolerant so that they can have it in their coffee? For the rest of us who are not, I would defy you to taste the difference between lactose-free milk and regular milk. I personally don't know the difference. So again, there are ways, because people will say, well, you know what, Christy, that's great, but I can't do 12 versions of a dish. It's going to cost too much. I don't have time. Imagine what my BEOs would look like. Again, it doesn't have to be complicated. And if you personally taste the regular milk, taste the lactose-free milk. If you can't tell the difference, neither can anyone else. Put a little sign on it that says lactose friendly, or in your program for you to put something in about, we are very aware of our attendees' sensitivities and food allergies. For that reason, all milk that is put out will be lactose-free. You can address it in an email, you can address it in the program, you can address it at the event. There are tons of ways you can disseminate this information. If there's only one person who's got a lactose allergy or intolerance, they're still important. So you decide how you want to disseminate the information, but you need to make sure that you are paying attention to folks. And again, just because I have an allergy to it, that doesn't mean that there isn't a workaround. Okay, we had talked about in the beginning that it's not just food preferences and sensitivities. Part of it is age. So a millennial has different food preferences than someone who's Generation X, than a baby boomer. Some of the buzzwords, or the trends that are happening and have been for a while, you've got organic food. You've also got local food. And millennials, as a rule, it seems, are very, very interested in organic food. Now, do you know the difference between organic food and green food, local green? So not all local food is organic. Not all organic food is local. So I'm going to tell you what the difference is and why there is a difference and why you need to know this. So going green means reducing your carbon footprint. So if I'm going to do green produce, local produce, what that means is my asparagus didn't ship in from Argentina. My tomatoes weren't sent to Iowa from New Jersey. So from a carbon emissions perspective, the fact that it is local makes it green because I've reduced my carbon footprint. It does not mean that it is organic. So sometimes you can have one or the other. You can have both. Perhaps your local farmer is also organic, but you need to ask the question. Conversely, if you go organic, that doesn't mean that it's green. So my organic asparagus may have come from 500 miles away, so my carbon footprint is still pretty immense, but my food is pure because it is organic. So you want to be really careful, because if you are advertising that you've gone green for your meeting, it isn't just that you've gotten rid of your binders and you're handing out presentations on jump drives. You can do it with food, but by saying you've gone organic, that doesn't keep in with your conference has gone green. You have to ask. One of the advantages to going local is oftentimes it's less expensive. It's always going to be fresher. It's always going to be a relationship that the hotel, a standing relationship that the hotel has with that supplier that's a little bit more personal. So if chef goes to, or the farm comes and says, you know what, you ordered broccoli rabe today and it just, you know what, it's a day or two before it should get picked, so we've brought you spinach. Better that than what you get delivered isn't at its peak of freshness or its quality ripeness, because if an order is placed through a larger vendor, that's it just arrives. So oftentimes when you go local, if you're willing to be flexible, you may think that you're going to have a vegetable chutney with these 3 vegetables. They may swap it out because the farmer says, you know what, the corn this week is fabulous, it's at its height of sweetness, we gave you this instead. So again, local means you've reduced your carbon footprint. It doesn't necessarily mean it's organic. Organic, no pesticides, which a lot of people are looking for, doesn't mean that you've gone green. And what I am finding is that baby boomers, still big meat and potato fans, still like foods that I wouldn't call clean. Generation X, we were big into, paleo diets, and getting rid of carbs. Millennials seem to be, it's local, it's organic, it's clean. There's also pescatarians now, which has been around for, I guess, about 10 years. It's a vegetarian who will eat shellfish, won't eat any other meat. So pescatarian is kind of a hybrid between vegetarian and not vegetarian. So you've got your pescatarians. I think that spans, it's not as much of a baby boomer thing as it is for Generation X and millennials to be a pescatarian. And what's interesting is you can be an expert on this today, and something new is going to come out and change tomorrow. You also have food trends, which complicate this even more, or if you want to look at it a different way, make it that much more exciting and interesting. So I'm going to transition to that really quick, but what I would ask you to do is, if you have questions about anything that we've discussed thus far, if you would start sending them in, that would be great. The last time I did a webinar, I didn't allow for enough time for all the questions, so I want to make sure that I do that today, because that was some feedback that I got. But if we want to talk about food trends, and those are difficult to keep up with as well, we're still dealing with menu costs, we're still dealing with potentially large groups of people. I don't work exclusively for companies that have enormous budgets. I oftentimes work with companies who don't have enormous budgets. One of the things that we want to do is find a way to incorporate food being attractive, interesting, visually pleasing, and affordable. One of the things that I've talked about in the past, but I'm going to bring it up again because it's really worth it. If you establish a relationship with your chef and you give him some latitude with, chef, whatever's fresh, tonight we need to have a chicken dish, make it the way you want to make it, but with whatever's fresh from the market or that's in season right now, or that the people in the ballroom next to me are having, so that you can make it in a greater quantity, you can order it in a greater quantity, it's less labor, it's less, you get a volume price discount, and potentially you're able to upgrade the quality of your food, so you may want to do that. But to do a chicken with, again, I'll say, just if you've got cilantro and lime, like, it brightens the flavor of everything. A little orange zest brightens a ton of, brings a ton of flavor to things. It doesn't have to be expensive. Sometimes simple is better. Right now, a lot of people are interested in the bite size, the little tapas size, and the sample sizes. That's fantastic. The challenge with that, and you would perhaps think that because you're doing bite size, that you're using less food, so your costs will go down. The labor on those, intensive. So if you think about, you've got 100 little cupcakes, it takes longer to ice the cupcake than it does to bake the cupcake half the time. So in doing that, it might be cute and it might be trendy, but it might blow your budget up. So small food often comes with a big price tag. So you want to, again, but if you want to do trendy and you want to be able to stay with the times but also stay with your budget, there are ways that you can bring bite-sized things in. If you decide you're going to for a dinner, to do cocktail meatballs instead of huge spaghetti meatballs, and have them cook them the same way they would a full-size meatball, but do them cocktail size. Do tiny, you can put spaghetti, if you're going to do a buffet, have it in a little cup and put a little meatball on top of it, because if I'm self-serving it, then I take out the labor, and you are just going to have a little bit, and you can go back as many times as you want to put different toppings on it, or to take different combinations of things, but you're putting the labor on me, which is helpful. So again, if you're creative and you look at things as, how in the world am I going to make this work, but you're excited about it, it makes a big difference. And food should make people happy. And think about, and I keep this in mind as often as I can, when we used to get fed on flights, we being, the general public, we used to complain about the food. How many people have used to eat airline food and were ever excited about what was put in front of them? Right? We always complained about it. Then they took it away and were acrimonious, because the only thing we liked less than eating it was having them take it away from us. So think about, if you are presenting food to people that they're not going to enjoy, it's going to make them cranky. If you don't think through all the options that you need for everyone who's there, now these folks have nothing to eat, and now they're really unhappy. So it's fun, it's easy, it just takes some time and some creativity. The slides that I've created, I'm happy to send to all of you, so you've got some tips and tricks, and you can remember that Worcestershire sauce is not vegetarian friendly. People with gluten sensitivity can't have California rolls, because they can have the rice, but they can't have the artificial sushi. I'll send you all of this. But what's really important isn't necessarily the facts that I'm sharing with you, it's the presence, the perception of how to do this. It's not an accident that I had a bunch of cartoons in this presentation. It's important that you don't get intimidated by it. It's important that you don't get permanently frustrated by it. Everybody gets frustrated, but you can't have this become one of those, I hate doing menus now because it's so complicated. Honestly, the simpler you make things, if you think about an apple, be it organic or local, but that's a pretty simple food, and you can throw it in a baking dish and put cinnamon over it, and bammo, you've got now a dessert. It doesn't have to be complicated, and the less complicated it is, the healthier it is, the more people it will be able to appeal to, and the less expensive it's going to be. So keep a good attitude about it. Most of us love to eat, so planning menus with one arm tied behind your back could kind of be cool and kind of be fun. So if you look at it as a new challenge and an adventure, it will perhaps help you from wanting to kill the lactose sensitive, vegan, kosher, gluten-free person who signs up on your next event, because I appreciate that can be crazy. I'm going to just look and see if we have some questions. I've got, I work for a government, and we work the meals. At a per diem cost. I'm looking for ways to have a decent meal at a per diem besides pasta. Okay, easy. One of the things, so pasta is great because it's a stretch item, and stretch items are inexpensive. But what I would suggest, especially if you're doing a per diem, if you're not the only person in that venue, I would absolutely see what the people next door are having the next night for dinner, had the night before for dinner, and do what's called ganging your menu, because you can perhaps piggyback onto what they're ordering and get a volume price because you're ordering for more than just your group. That would be one thing I would suggest. The other thing is, if you think about short ribs, okay, those became very in vogue. In maybe the last 5 or 7 years, they weren't always in vogue, and the reason is because the part of the cow that short ribs comes from is very tough, and chefs didn't like to use that meat because it was sinewy, it wasn't good. Well, now short ribs cook low and slow, that dissolves those tendons, and now that meat is soft and wonderful. My point being, you can take a lower cut of meat, and if you are creative about how you use it, think about it. no one is going to look at short ribs and say they slacked on this, there was no money. It's something that you can do very nicely with, corn muffins, because who doesn't love corn muffins? And you turn it into either something thematic or just a down-home hearty meal, and you did it with a lower cut of meat and with corn muffins, and you do a side of green beans and you call it a day. Now, halal folks can't eat the pork, vegetarians, yes, but for the masses, it's an easy thing to do. Ask chef what cuts of meat he would recommend that he can be creative with. You can also do high-end foods that you can stretch. So instead of doing lobster, you do lobster bisque so that you can have a seafood element, but you're not feeding them all the seafood. As far as government per diems, the other thing that I would tell you is, one, do as much on per consumption as possible if you know your audience's history. So if you do individual boxes of cereal, you only pay for what they've eaten. If you do a granola bar or a chocolate bar or a bag of chips, you pay for what someone takes. You need historical data to make that work, because what also happens is if there are candy bars out, I'm going to take 3 instead of 1 because they're free. But you can perhaps do a bag for each person as they come in, and here are 2 bottles of water, a granola bar, a bag of chips, and an apple, and those are your grazing foods for the day. And we're going to give you meals, but here are the things that you can graze, and that way you know exactly what these folks are eating. And may I please ask that if you do not choose to eat everything that's in your bag, just put it on this table as you walk out the door, and then everything that was in there, the hotel can take back. Because as long as it wasn't opened, then those bags of chips, those chocolate bars, those bottles of water, which, come on guys, these are between $6 and $8 now a bottle, those come back to you. So if I were dealing with a per diem, that's absolutely one of the things that I would do, is as much on consumption, but then control what they take by giving it to them, not letting them take it for themselves. I think that would be a really good way to go. The other thing I would do is invest in someone to monitor your food, because this is what happens. And it's not necessarily intentional, but you say to a hotel, I need you to put out, I'm going to order 10 gallons of coffee. And I was flabbergasted the last time I was in San Francisco with the Plus Plus at a 5-star hotel. The coffee was $160 a gallon. Mind-boggling. So I hire someone, there's someone on my team who does nothing but stand at the food and beverage stations all day and watch. So if I order 10 gallons of coffee and the group isn't drinking at all, so we don't do a refresh, she counts how many times they come and how many gallons we consumed versus how many we ordered. Because coffee, they won't ding you for it. If they didn't make it, they usually won't charge you for it. Same thing with hot water. I also make sure that the coffee is replaced, not refreshed, because if someone comes and dumps a new batch of coffee, they open up the top of the urn and dump new coffee on top of what was sitting down there, no bueno, especially at $160 a gallon. But I also have that person, we count in the chocolate bars, the granola bars, the bottles of water, and so when everything is put out, we say, okay, we know we have 50 bottles of water. That person, when everybody goes back into break and banquets comes to refresh, she stands there and she counts with that person and says, okay, we started with 50, we're at 23, so this is where we are. And we know literally how many bottles have been consumed, how many bags, how many candy bars. We save thousands and thousands and thousands, Scout's honor, in doing that, because the hotel doesn't have time to have someone count it all. And the truth is, your group kills the buffet, or your break. And all of a sudden they just need to go out there and replenish. Well, my person has been there counting. They just want to refill, and we're there to watch and to do the counting. It saves us countless money. It makes a big difference. The money, and if you say that you can't afford it, text me. I will send you some of the paperwork that I have of, here's what the hotel said in counts, here's what we had in counts, here's the difference. And when you present them with a form, because we have a form that says, okay, you said we drank 400 waters and we actually drank 317, they don't argue with you. They also know that we're honest. But that alone has paid for that person for the week. So you will make money if you have someone paying attention and literally dedicated just to your food. Someone just sent something that said, we started doing $5 gift cards for those who want decaf on our smaller consumption program, so you don't have to order decaf by the gallon, which is a great idea. Absolutely. And what you can also do is, if there is a group history and you know that your group doesn't drink a whole lot of coffee, or they're tea drinkers or they're orange juice drinkers, if you know your group's consumption history, it gives you a tremendous amount of power and a lot of ability to, when you're planning these menus, do it wisely so that you're not wasting money. If per diem is an issue and you know that your group doesn't eat breakfast, well, then don't serve breakfast. And then when you do your AM break, which is maybe, if you start at 8, you do your break at 10:30, then put out small egg sandwiches at the break, so that for breakfast, you didn't have a lot out. The break, you're now feeding them, which you're probably going to feed them anyway. If you're going to do lunch, don't do dessert. Save the dessert till your PM break and see where you can stretch. Talk to the hotel about, if union rules allow, can they replate things? So if you have to do, my group does eat in the mornings and I do need to have, Danish and carbs out. Well, see if they can replate them and put them out at the morning break so that, again, you're not throwing things out. Just because it was out for the breakfast doesn't mean it can't come out for the AM break. Some of us just don't think about that. But your idea about the gift cards, if you know that there is a coffee shop that is close by, and again, if I will tell you that if I'm the person who drinks decaf coffee and everyone around me is making their coffee and you say to me, here's a $5 gift card, go to Starbucks, I might not be in love with that. If I know in advance, or somehow there's something in it for me to do that, that's fabulous. I would be interested in how you do that so that those people don't either feel inconvenienced or ostracized. So I think that's helpful. What else can I tell you? Food and beverage history, again, so incredibly important, especially with alcohol. And the other thing that we do want to be mindful of is alcohol and allergies. It's amazing what's going on with what they're putting in drinks. So you want to be mindful that when you've got food allergies, that you also communicate that information to a bartender, because excuse me, it's incumbent upon me to say I'm allergic to XYZ, so I can't have this particular drink. But it is something that if you know that you've got a group that's highly allergic to whatever, sorry, that may affect the beverages, you want to make sure that you let the entire staff know that. I'm sorry, guys, excuse me. The other thing that I will tell you about food and beverage history, is if you know that half your group eats breakfast and half your group does not, if you have 100 people coming, your guarantees don't have to be 100 for every meal. You may know that if half your group doesn't eat breakfast, so you may make your guarantee for breakfast 45 people. And, excuse me, that's fine. As long as the people who are there have food, that's fine. What we do is we usually play with our numbers. We know that at the morning, our whole group is not going to have breakfast. AM break, they're going to hit it hard. Lunch, I'm going to lose about 15 to 20% of my guests if I know my demographic, because they're going to meetings, they're spending the time on the phone, who's running out to lunch with a client. So I'm going to drop my numbers 15 to 20% at lunch. PM break, people have left. So my PM break numbers go down. From having a cocktail reception after the event, my numbers are going down again in terms of head count, but I do know that at the end of the day, with free alcohol and you've been sitting in a ballroom all day, the average person for an open bar drinks 2.5 glasses of whatever it is they're drinking, alcohol, per hour in the first hour. Think about it. You go to a wedding, it's an open bar, you walk in, you head for the bar, you grab a whatever. You drink it quickly because it's free and this is fabulous. You immediately order a second one. You drink that one a little bit slower. Now you realize cocktail hour is winding down. You're probably not going to be able to get a drink once you get to your table. So you're going to go up and get a third just so you've got it for the rest of your meal. 50% of the people go up and get that third drink. So 2.5 glasses per person in the first hour. Really important to know. Historical data will help you, but as you're playing with your guarantees, if you know that by the end of the day 50% of your audience has left, that's fine. From a food perspective, adjust, but be aware that your alcohol prices may not reflect that you only have 50 people there, because they may drink enough for 75. So as you're doing your budgeting, you're only surprised. Well, you're surprised for two reasons. One, you're not prepared. And two, it's a brand new group and you didn't have information. But you want to track what it is that they're drinking, because you can also, if you know, like one of the folks who are doing the decaf gift cards, if you know that your group does not drink decaf, well, then you either get a carafe of it for the one-offs, or you simply don't order it. You wouldn't know that if you weren't paying attention. So it is really, really helpful. That is, I think, what's on top of my mind for today as it relates to food and beverage and allergies and pricing and being creative. What I'd like to ask you to do is reach out to me. If you would like these slides, I'd be happy to show them to you. Very quickly, we talked about labeling everything. If you have any other questions, I'm going to start to wrap it up, but I do want to share with you how to find me. I'd love to send these slides to you. If there are questions that you think of after this or that I didn't see, I'm more than happy to answer them. The last webinar I did, I wrote to each person individually so that if you had a question, every single person got a personalized answer, as well as the answers to everybody else's questions, so that you could learn from everyone. Let me just get you to, this is how to find me. So if you want to continue this conversation, if you have some feedback, if there's something that I missed that you want to teach me, I'd love to learn more. You can find me at christy.lamagna@strategic.events. There is no .com, it's just .events. And if you don't know that there is a .events option out there, you should. It's especially for entrepreneurs. It's a really powerful way to brand what we do, and there aren't enough of us using that, so that's a little side tip. If you go to @SMEChristy and just tweet, please send me your slides, I will send you my slides. I'll get that taken care of by the end of the day. And if there's anything else that you want to reach out to me and ask, again, christy.lamagna@strategic.events. I love doing these. I love finding out what it is that you're interested in and how I can better help you. So if you want to just send me an email that says, that's great, but I really wish you had spent more time on, or do you know anything about, the folks at PCMA are so interested in making sure that we are presenting for you what's important, what's interesting, and what you don't know, and not regurgitating old information. So if you take the time to tell us what you need, we will take the time to make sure we deliver it to you. So I'm going to say thank you for your time today. This was a lot of fun for me. I hope you enjoyed it. Please stay in touch, continue the conversation, and thanks a lot. It's been great. Have a good one, guys.